Well, thank you very much for joining. Just looking today, you've got like over 100 speed runs you've done on speedrun.com. So
There's a few of them on there.
there's over 100. So what was it got you into speedrunning in the first place? I'm intrigued.
Um, so after I finished my university work and graduated with my degree, I moved really far away from where I grew up. I grew up in Pittsburgh, like in the Northeast, and now I live in like southern Texas near the Mexican border.
All
So
right.
I moved when I moved here, I had like no friends, I didn't have any family nearby. I just moved for work and I kind of found and navigated my way to speedrunning just from like trying to find new hobbies to fill my time with, if that makes sense. And um specifically like the Final Fantasy games, which are some of my favorite games of all time, became something that I had never really thought too deeply as like a game that someone would try to cruise through. Um, and then it kind of dawned on me that Final Fantasy IX, which was my favorite game and the game that I first did speedrun, has like a built-in like speedrun reward in that the best weapon in the game can only be obtained if you get to near the very end in under 12 hours. And so I kind of used it as like a way to force myself to try to challenge myself to get that weapon.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of like navigated it to speedrunning through really wanting to do that, which was something I had never done as a kid. And then from there, I just started to kind of like collaborating and meeting with other people that also were interested in the game. And I met some really cool people. And so I kind of stuck with it and then started getting into other games and other genres. And now I've kind of like over the last 10 years sort of like hit kind of like, this really vast range of games, from the RPGs that I started with to like really obnoxious precision platformers and kind of just like, I had a little smorgasbord of
Totally, yeah. Crash Bandicoot 3's in there as well, I think, as well in that. But I mean, that's one that's I suppose in a way geared to be speedrun because of the relic challenges. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
sure.
so that's interesting then. So a question I've got for you. So have you ever tried to speedrun something before you've played it casually, or is it a prerequisite
uh
to play it casually?
so there's kind of like both schools of thought, and I have obviously had I've had contradicting opinions within myself, depending on the game. One thing that some of my friends and I will do, we do what we call the clown fiesta,
Right.
and we've done this for like a couple of years, where basically someone will pitch a game, and we'll all meet up like on Discord or something on a weekend, and like between 6 and 10 of us will all blindly race the same game that none of us have ever played. And so we have done like speed runs of games that I have not played casually before. And honestly, it can be a lot of fun, especially if you pick a really janky game that's like really old, the controls are not particularly great, like things that have just dated out of
Yeah.
being like having like high quality of life playability. It can be so funny to just watch people struggle trying to be efficient but also just make it through the game. And one such race we did a race of a PlayStation 1 adaptation of the Cartoon Network cartoon Dexter's Laboratory.
Right.
And I was like securely in the lead of like the 8 people, and then out of nowhere someone else had just finished the game, and we went back and like reworked like how the this happened, and we found out that one of the people in the race accidentally figured out that you could skip like an entire segment of the game. And so then after we realized this, we like reported it to the people that actually speedrun the game, and it basically changed the entire run for everybody that had played it, because one person in our like silly little, no name race of people that didn't actually play the game like accidentally figured out that you don't need to do like a solid chunk of it, more or less allowing everyone that had previously run it
Yeah.
get like a better time much more easily because they could just not do it.
Uh,
And so it's kind of fun when like weird things like that happen too, I
it,
guess.
it's awesome. I mean, I'm not really much of a speed. I've got two speed runs on speedrun.com. I've got like an easy automatic Devil May Cry, which is somewhere in there, and Crash Bandicoot 2 that I can sort of do quickly because it's my favorite game. I play it casually once a year, and because I play it casually, I can sort of do it. But Devil May Cry one. It's interesting because me and my friend literally used to live around the corner,
Hmm.
and most of that community, I don't know if you know, they tended to play it on normal difficulty and higher. They didn't play
Okay,
on easy
sure.
automatic, but we were doing that because we were like, oh, we can't play normal; it's too hard. But we ended up playing it, and there was like a during the lockdown, the first lockdown, he did he entered a tournament, and because of the way he played the game, because the game's, I don't know if you know Devil May Cry at all, but because it's slightly
I,
differently,
like fairly
yeah.
well.
But
Not
like
like a game I spent a lot of time in, but definitely like familiar enough.
well, the enemies are like slightly different. The game's the same, but like the enemy placements are slightly different in the easy automatic. It's almost a different game, but like ever
Okay.
so slightly tweaked. So because of the way he was playing it and the way that we'd like raced it over a few years, it changed the strategies. It didn't completely change the game where the game was played, but it made it a lot more accessible to people because you know easy automatic, and it was a really good moment actually because
Mhm.
we're all stuck inside. He literally lived around the corner from me. I couldn't physically see him, but it was like, oh great, we've done
Yeah,
something that
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
you know, it made people happy, which I think is a great side of it, isn't it? Really. So, is that what drives you to do this kind of stuff as well? The
yeah.
community building side of it?
I think for sure
Yeah.
at the core, and like people that have like been a part of watching my stream or hang out like in my Discord or in my channel regularly, you know, like I like to be competitive with myself, but I am not like an overly competitive
No.
individual. Like I always want to get better and do well at the games that I'm trying to do well at, but I've never been like someone that's been like particularly interested in like, oh, I got to grind for world record in this
Yeah.
game, or I got to be top 5 in this game. Like I think the social aspect of
Yeah.
it for me is definitely the thing that I enjoy the most. Like, I mean, you're essentially surrounding yourself by people that you know you have common interests with, and like as an absolute like base level. And so from there, you certainly like after kind of meeting enough people in that like field of people with similar interests, you then can find people that you like connect with
Yeah.
on like a personal level and that you like get along with and that like you enjoy spending time with. Um, like for sure, several of my like closest Twitch friends are, I wouldn't use like Twitch friend as like a
Yeah.
modifier to describe them. I would just say they're some of my closest friends. Like I met my girlfriend on Twitch that I've
Oh,
been
okay.
dating for 5 years now. The community of Twitch has brought so much to me in a social sense that like I think it would be ignorant of me to pretend like it isn't as important and ingrained in my life now as it really is, if that makes sense.
No,
And
that's cool.
I think that that's definitely what has drawn me to kind of stick with it and keep back at it. Yeah.
Totally. Well, I'm not obviously not as big on Twitch, but like
Yeah, yeah,
consuming
sure.
Twitch and YouTube, yeah, I kind of feel the same way about it, especially during the lockdown period where we couldn't really do much else. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
exactly what it was like in the
absolutely.
States, but certainly in the UK, it was, for me personally, I couldn't leave the house for 3 months. So it was like, what do I do with my time? I know, well, I'll go on YouTube or I'll sit and play a game in the evening, and like, it sort of almost created that necessity where people that maybe have done that previously didn't have anything else, and maybe people like that sort of coped a bit better. I don't know. I mean, it's probably a psychological question that, but I think it's changed. That's probably the maybe the silver lining. I think probably if something like
I
COVID.
well, I think like what you're kind of describing with like the COVID boom of
Yeah,
just like being at home and video gaming. I think that the thing that's interesting with the communities around video games and their speed run is that it essentially takes what would otherwise for many games be a solo individual one person experience and makes it a shared
yeah,
experience with the group of people who are also trying to improve their individual performance. So like there's like the element of playing it on an individual and like solo level within the scope of being a part of a group that like for the most part in my experience people want the group to succeed
yeah,
and do better. Like very rarely do I have I ever seen anyone upset that someone else in the community has
yeah,
like eclipsed their time in the game. Like typically you'll see that like there's certainly like a level of like mature sportsmanship,
yeah,
generally speaking, in which people are genuinely happy that
yeah,
other people have got a new best time, regardless of if it means that they're dropping down some arbitrary leaderboard on the
yeah,
internet, right? And I do think that that's kind of like something that I think some other things that are like competitive struggle to maintain
yeah.
as much. Not that that's always the case. Like there are
No,
obviously exceptions to that rule with speedrunning, but I think generally that's the vibe that I've gotten over the last.
yeah. I think as well. I mean, like on we were well, probably on going on to Final Fantasy because I'm a big Final Fantasy nerd as well. I mean, I've obviously not played them as many times as you have as
Yeah,
quickly,
sure, sure.
but like you mentioned the Excalibur 2 run thing there.
Yeah.
Now, obviously the PAL regions, that's nigh and impossible to do because of how the game runs slower. So
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
don't know anyone like I do know people online, but I don't know anyone in the
yeah,
UK
yeah.
that's ever managed it. So I guess like those little idiosyncrasies of people in different, like you say, different sort of patches that are playing these games slightly differently actually bring something to the kind of the core of how people play it. And it tends to, I guess, like you said with the Dexter's Lab thing, it kind of brings in a new spark that no one thought of before, because especially with Final Fantasy games, because they're so big. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
assuming
yeah.
you know about it probably, but I watched like a challenge run video on YouTube the other day because I made a video on I do like how-to videos on YouTube for like
Mhm.
gaming things, and I did like how to beat Diablos or Diablo, however you say it,
Okay.
in
Yeah,
Final
yeah,
Fantasy
sure.
8, because there's a few strategies you can throw at it, and I looked up a challenge run, and I had no idea, and that's probably the game I've spent the most time on. Final Fantasy 8. It's probably not my
Okay.
favorite, but it's the game I've spent the most time on. I had no idea that when you get to the parade at the end, if you kill Squall, then the battle ends. Like
Yeah, that's the thing.
I had no idea. And this is something like maybe a week or two ago I found out. I'm thinking I've been playing this game since 1999, and I had no idea. So it's like I mean, are these on a Final Fantasy front? Are the games solved? Does everyone know everything about them, or are there little things
It,
that
it
might?
it's one of those things where it's like because the scope of like options throughout all of them, things are it's very fluid. Like things are always changing. But like the caveated part of like the evolving routes that people do is that a vast majority of the time, with the exception of like finding like a way to skip an entire section of the game,
Yeah,
which is like objectively faster, most changes come with some small like give and take element
yeah,
to them where like you might be sacrificing some time loss earlier and making up more than that later or vice versa, and like those sorts of things happen all the time, and with how many abilities and equipment options there are in 9, like you'll just see people do stuff at different points. Like you'll see people that will like they won't use the same parties and they'll like learn abilities at different points in the run. Like it really is like super fluid. And like anyone that tells you like route A is objectively far and
yeah,
above the best route and there's no arguing against it, like I think those people are just very like limited in their thinking of how the games work. Um, because some routes that might be potentially faster will sacrifice like tons of consistency in order
yeah,
to gamble for the quicker option, if that makes sense. So like it's always interesting if you watch 10 people run the same game and it is a long RPG, there is a very real chance that you'll see 5 different ways that it is being played from start to finish. There might be a lot of overlap, but they're not all going to be the same, and I
yeah.
think that that's one of the things that's cool about it.
Have you ever done
um
like a live race of Final Fantasy 9 with someone else, or one of these events?
that's the thing. So here's what's hilarious with the Final Fantasy 9 on PlayStation 1
Right.
specifically is that when you game over to a boss, like it's over, right? Like
Yeah.
unless you had like a memory card and we're like wasting time saving. So we'll do community races sometimes, and usually nowadays we'll like have like the friendly agreement of where we're gonna save or how many
Yeah.
times we'll save to keep the race alive. I have a screenshot somewhere where we did like a 20-person race and
Mm.
I won the race. But if you look at the results, it's like Muttski finished, has my time, and then it's 19 names that just say did not finish because everyone just died. Which is so it's like with the HD releases of the game, which has an autosave feature, it
Yeah.
has become considerably more
Yeah.
raceable. But for a long time before that existed, like it was just not a good race game because of exactly that reason. You would just have 20 people and halfway through it would be down to 10. By the end, you would be down to like 2, like because it's so easy to die. It's very volatile. So
Yeah. Well, I think I think it was because I did the PlayStation 4 trophy run. I tried anyway. I
yeah, sure, sure.
couldn't do the skipping rope. Still haven't managed
Oh
that.
yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah. But I did the Excalibur 2,
Mm,
and I think it was your guide or followed what you'd done
yeah,
to get
sure.
it. Um And but I didn't. I mean, I didn't do it live. Well, I'd segment it, so I'd save every
Yeah.
so often, and I managed. I think I got all the way to the Gullig volcano, and that was it. That's just why I just sort of went, screw it. I'll put the speed run. I'll put the speed boost on and just get the trophy
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
it was just too hard for me. But I guess yeah. But when you're watching yourself or someone else play that game, it looks really easy because of course you just throw an attack on it and it goes. But like there's so much, like you say, with the equipment. I tend to play Final Fantasy 9 casually, and what I'll do is I'll do the whole
yeah.
like learn all the abilities as you get
Yeah,
them
of
in an area
course.
because it's like, oh, I feel it's like coloring in, it's just
Yeah.
de-stresses me. But then playing it where you go, well, actually that pit of armor there's got like a shadow buff or whatever, like that's a completely reasonably new to me. So it's like that completely opens up the game. So it's like a game which on the face of it's quite simple is actually it's a really really well designed RPG. So I mean, is that why it's your favorite one or?
I think there are a multitude of reasons. If you asked me 4 years ago, like when
Yeah.
I did Final Fantasy 9 at Awesome Games Done Quick in 2019, and they literally asked me what my favorite Final Fantasy game was, and I did not say FF9.
All
Actually,
right.
I said Final Fantasy 8, which
Okay.
was true at the time. Final Fantasy 9 has worked its way up to favorite status though. But first, like one thing I was gonna say, like just kind of to your point about like all of the like equipment management and stuff. I always tell people when they're watching a Final Fantasy speedrun, especially 9, like specifically, and to a lesser extent 8 and 7, I think the most interesting and impressive things that are going on in the run are not the things that are happening in the battle itself, but all of the like prep work and like
Yeah.
understanding of how to micromanage all of these passives that equipment have that many people like me included didn't even know existed when they played the game casually, and just how they like are able to be stacked and then utilized in a way that make the battle kind of seem
Yeah.
underwhelming. Like I think that's what makes it um kind of like the more impressive part of the run. But as far as like 9 becoming my favorite, uh it is just a story that like over time, so I teach like an advanced literature class
Okay.
at a high school, like it's what I do for a living. So like literary analysis is just like my thing, right? I'm
Right.
a
Okay.
huge cinema guy, love movies, and there is so much in the FF9 story writing that I just think is like one of the best stories in video games that I
Yeah.
have ever played. Like there's so much about it that I think is great. I think Vivi is probably my favorite video game character of all time for a lot of reasons. It just does a lot of things with like introducing ideas that I and concepts that I think are interesting to talk about. I talk to my chat all the time when people, obviously one of the questions I get asked is, why do you run FF9? Like, is FF9 your favorite? Like,
Mm.
easily things that people ask me all the time. And I always just try to pitch them something that like I think that they can take away
Yeah.
something more than just, oh, I think it's fun or it's a game I played in my childhood. I really like that the game kind of introduces this idea of like kind of coming to terms with one's own
Yeah.
mortality and figuring out what you want to do with the ephemeral nature of that time. Because you got basically like, you have Kuja, who's when he realizes that he is not immortal later on, he reacts in a way that he's like, oh, I want to destroy everything. If I don't get to live, then nobody does.
Yeah.
And then you have like Vivi, who is kind of struggling with like his purpose the entire story. And he kind of sees the other side of that dichotomy in Zidane, where he's like, oh, well, he's this free spirit guy. He's like, oh, you should spend time, doing things for people that you like and like wanting to enjoy the time that you have with them. And then like kind of gets Vivi to like make that connection on his own through spending time with him. And I just think that like things like that, I'm like, I think that this game has so much more to
No.
say about lives that we live in a way that I think people don't realize because it's like this cartoony fantasy
Yeah.
style
Yeah.
game.
I agree. I mean, I've never beaten number seven. I've never beaten seven completely.
Okay,
I'm playing through on the PS5 at the moment, the PS4
cool.
version. No, it's not the remake, the
Yeah, yeah,
digital
yeah, yeah.
version. So I
Absolutely.
can use the speed boost and don't have to hold circle to run or whatever it is, which is much better.
Yeah.
I got to like the snow part, so I've beaten
You're
Midgar like
getting there.
30 times. I'm nearly there, but eventually I'll do it. But like eight was the one I played first,
Mm.
and I've got a soft spot for that game. People obviously it's a You know, some people love it, some people hate it, but I still think it's a great game, and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
9, I think, is the same as you. Like it sort of like started here, and then eventually, like you realize as you grow up and grow older that it's deeper than it looks. Because I think I played 8 recently, and I finally beat Omega Weapon, which I was pleased with.
Okay, cool.
And which, yeah, I was like really hard. And then but I was watching the story and I'm thinking like some of this is quite childish. Like it's really teenagery. It's great, but it's like
Yeah.
at the same time you're like, oh come on, like I grew out of this kind of stuff, and it's almost like a nostalgia trip. Whereas with
I
9, it's like actually the themes like all hold up. You know, so
I think that that's essentially, I think we have experienced the same thing.
yeah,
All right. So FF8 was also the first like major Final Fantasy I played. I had played Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the Super Nintendo when I was just a wee little lad, but like FF8 was like the first proper RPG,
yeah,
with actual story and characters. And I think because of that, I was like a kid at the time. Like I feel like I connected with
yeah,
the
yeah.
immaturity of Squall and the other characters a lot. And so then I think like I just held on to that
I
nostalgic
agree.
attachment for a long time. And then when I played 9, I was like, oh, this isn't mature at all. Like
No,
this is the kid one. I was
yeah,
like, this is the RPG for children. And then like as I really played
yeah,
them more and more as an adult, I think my opinion shifted where I was like, I think this is too childish for me to connect to. I don't really relate with the immaturity of Squall anymore. Like, I think where I used to be like kind of a shy, like not necessarily outgoing individual, like I don't feel that way about me at
no,
all anymore. Like I'm incredibly outgoing. I don't struggle in social settings. Like, so I feel like my connection to Squall really dissolved. And
yeah,
there's just a lot in 9 that I'm like, this has the appearance of like a whimsy
yeah,
of youth because the characters are still mostly young characters, but I think the things that the story is saying are far more
yeah.
adult and like things that I think that adults could actually take something away from
I totally
more
agree.
so than 8. So I think that's kind of where like you were describing, I think that that's kind of the
Yeah.
shift that I was experiencing
I
with
really,
it.
I mean, the thing is, I think with 8, I think I'd stand by that that there's some moments in the game that are really still get me. Like the
Oh
one
yeah.
that really gets me is I like the because obviously you talk about story and stuff like that, and I could probably
Mm.
talk to you about that like for hours. But like there's the I don't think the story structure of 8 is particularly well structured, but
Yeah, yeah,
there's some repetitive beats in it that are really well done. So like there's the part where like Squall takes over as leader, and then at first he's like, I'm not doing a speech, and then the next time he's like, okay, yeah,
yeah,
he does a little
sure.
speech, and then the third speech, like his theme starts playing, and then he like embraces his
Mhm.
destiny and then takes charge, and that like I play that now, and that still gives me goosebumps now. But 9, like the whole journey, like I mean, I love sort of like all the settings in 9. Like I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's interesting. Trino, I call it, but like
Yeah, yeah.
the
Trino, I hear it
Bruno, yeah.
all.
So the noble place. When I get there, I just love exploring that place because it's just like like it's like a real place. You know, it's like okay, you got the really noble people that have got so much money, and then you got the really poor people down here, and it's like wow, okay, this is like a proper medieval place. You know, and I can walk, and then of course you got the different things in there. You got the monster in the weapon shop, and you got the auction room, and it's just such a cool place to walk around. You know, even and I think in a sense because of the way that certainly the way I play it, not speed running, but like when I play it like
Yeah, sure.
casually, it feels like I spend a lot more time in these places, so the story feels a bit more, you know, strung
Yeah.
out. Whereas with 8, like it's like yeah, okay, done that bit, done that bit, done that bit. And it feels like the whole game takes place in like 2 or 3 days. When you get to the end, you're like okay, it was just like a dream or something, you know.
Oh yeah,
Which
now we're in
which
outer space. Now we're back.
yeah, 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 exactly. But I mean, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? 8, but it's like a beautiful mess, I think.
A mess that will forever
Yeah,
be
yeah,
held dearly in my
to
heart.
totally. But
Um, but speaking of your point about like location and stuff, I think that one thing that I have noticed more is that there is just like from playing them over and over again, sometimes I'll just like have a moment where something will dawn on me and I'm like, wow, this is like a really subtle thing that I know was so carefully and intentionally inserted. So in 9, all right, I want you to envision in your head the like opening theme song from like the title screen, right? So like the
mm,
FF9 theme, we'll call it, all right? It also plays like in like a much more like so I don't want to say like solemn because it's not really solemn, but like a softer version when you finally get to Terra. The
Yeah.
song is called "The Place That I Come From" or "The Place That I'm From" or something, or
Right.
"Somewhere I'm From" or whatever. And it plays where the quite literally the place that Zidane is from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like I made that connection very early on. Then as I played the game more and more, I realized that some variant of that song plays at every location that hints at Terra. So like when you get to Oil Vare, where
Yeah.
you like see the maps and stuff,
Do,
a
do, do,
version of
do,
it
do.
plays
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Then you get to Ibsen's castle, which is like the place that like the inversion of the fusion of the worlds happens, and you get like another version of essentially the same melody. And like things like that are things that I just like from playing
Uh,
them over and over again, things start to like click, and I'm like,
yeah,
this is
that
really cool.
I've noticed that like musically, I've obviously noticed the same theme musically, but
Mm.
like I didn't like I've never made that connection with the like yeah okay yeah where it's linking because it's like his thoughts are like it's something he's connected to.
It's like the places that
Yeah,
you learn something about it, like about that connection, about Terra, is
yeah,
kind of leading you until you get the song, and the song is literally called Terra
yeah,
when you get there, right?
yeah.
And there's just like things like that that I'm like someone sat down, had this idea for this motif to music, and was like, let's pair this motif with every location that kind of have this connection to one another. And I don't know, it's just such a well conceived idea. Like I wish I had cool ideas like
Yeah,
that.
totally. I totally know. Well, that I think that I think the game's a masterpiece. I mean, the design wise as well. I mean, like even the silly little things like having to press X to go in the place on the world map and stuff like that. It just feels like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's an almost perfect game. I think the only thing that I would change about nine is the fighting the doing the two-person boss rush as all the different characters. You know, at the end where you fight the four fiends
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and you
yeah,
fight the
yeah.
Earth Guardian as Quina and Zidane
Okay.
or Zidane or
Yeah,
whatever you call
sure.
him. Like I wished you'd had like the actual boss battles as the different pairs.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
only thing that I think's missing from it. But I mean, well, if it's a
I hope
remake,
you would get excited for that battle where you get to have Garnet and Aiko
yeah, well,
though.
yeah. So interesting. Like we got a few more minutes before we get kicked
Yeah,
off.
sure.
Where's the eco hatred come from then? I'm intrigued.
Okay, so here, listen, you're getting the real scoop, right? You're getting the real story. So basically, there was one time. Have you ever like said something and out of context, people just thought you meant something
Yeah.
completely different? Because it's basically that. So Aiko is not even my least favorite of the playable characters in the game, let alone my least favorite character in the game. All
Right.
right, so there's that. Basically, I made a comment about how I was like reading some of the dialogue as I was like mashing through it, and I was like, man, Aiko is like the most insufferably annoying child in Final Fantasy IX. And people immediately turned that into me saying like Aiko's like the worst and stuff. And then it just kind of came a meme. And now it's like existed so long that the amount of people that were there for the original event is like a
No
small
one, yeah.
fraction of the people that watch my stream. And the other 95% of people that come to my stream, I'm not sure if they know if the hatred is real or not. So I
Make it
just
part of
kind
the
of lean
joke.
into it. Yeah, I just kind of lean into it. And if people want to think that I think that Aiko is like the worst, like that's fine. The meme has raised plenty of money for charity because anytime there's a charity race with FF9, people always want to name Aiko Muttski because they're just like they think that I'm gonna like be like, oh, you guys got me or something like that. So I just kind of let it happen. I encourage it a little
So-
bit. I have an emote. It's called Mutt Best Girl, and one of my friends made it for me. His name's Mike, and it's just the like icon of Aiko's head, but he put like this goofy face on it, and I don't know. It's we just kind of lean into it.
So who is your actual least favorite character in Final Fantasy
Uh,
IX
uh,
though?
uh, of the playable characters is definitely Amaranth. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have referenced a multitude of times in this interview how much I think the story and themes of the game matter to me, and
Mm.
I genuinely just be like, he does nothing to
No,
underscore or develop any of those.
no,
So like, he just doesn't really do anything for me.
no. He's
That's
like he's kind of like it reminds me of well I don't know if you've ever watched Stargate before, but like Jason
of
Momoa
course.
played Ronan Dex in that. It's like a really
Uh,
undeveloped version of him. Like he's just like the muscular cool
yeah,
guy, but
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
really go anywhere. It's like it's almost like he's sort of like watching on the outskirts, but doesn't really maybe eventually I'll click and go, oh my God, there's an element I never saw before. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
Perhaps we'll have to wait and see. Well, they may do a remake, which would be amazing. I'm sure. I mean, that's probably the game yeah. I mean, this series they keep talking about as well would be
Yeah, I'm
amazing as
excited.
well.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
I think that like out of all of them, that sorry, I got 10 minutes. It's cool. We're plenty of
Okay,
time to
good.
get more nerdy stuff in. I'm cool.
Yeah, sure,
I
sure.
think out of all of them, it's the one that I'd love to see a sequel to. I mean, like the seven stuff. I mean, like I said to you before, like I've
Mhm.
not beaten seven, but I've played it. Like I beat Midgar so many times. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
friends of mine recently, they played Aerith's theme as his wife came down the aisle, and
Oh, that's
things
great.
like that. So like it's in my life kind of thing. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know the game, I know
certainly.
the story, I know what happens. You know what I mean? But nine, like there's so much more to tell with it. Like, I think probably because of the themes you just described there. Like I think they could go further with that. And I think the characters could grow as well a bit more. And I think I personally think so anyway. I mean, I don't think that we would be milking it too much if they pushed for more story.
If I could get the like cart like the like the animated adaptation that they're doing, if I could have it, if I could wish for one thing to be true about it, I would love it to be something that a younger audience watches and just connects with in the
Yeah,
same way I did I was younger,
yeah,
and just like introduces not Final Fantasy 7 to a younger audience. Like I feel like the hype and love that 7 gets is totally deserved because I love the game and
yeah,
there's so much about it that I think is great. I just when 9 came out, it just got kind of ignored because of its aesthetic by a
yeah,
lot of people. And I think people didn't take it seriously. And I would love if like the adaptation that they're going to do for it made people reconsider that and realize that
yeah,
like it's not that at all. And like that its appearance is certainly to encapture kind of like a genuine like whimsical fantasy element of it, and that there is some like fairy tale
yeah,
ishness to it. But like I don't think that if you were like, is this game just like a fairy tale, I think my answer is a hard no. And
no,
so I hope that I would love if people would give it like a second watch, you know, a
yeah,
second
totally.
play to like reevaluate.
I think that like it to me like the Final Fantasy 7 feels like an almost like a mirror to the Western sort of like it's like a blade. It's got a bit of a Blade Runner
Yeah,
vibe,
yeah.
whereas
Kind of, yeah, for sure.
yeah, nine's like there's no real sci-fi. There obviously are sci-fi elements, but it's almost
Yeah.
like the steampunk. That's probably not the right term, but you know, there are sci-fi elements, but it's more magical and
Yeah.
whimsical and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, like you say, more adult in a sense. I mean, the identity stuff as well. I mean, like that was ahead of its time because everything like with all the different, every single character in the game is an individual, and I mean
Yes.
now as well. I mean,
And like that identity presents a conflict for
yeah,
literally all of them
yeah.
for the most part.
Totally, but like Steiner, I call him Steiner. There's no
Mhm.
pronunciation. I'm nearly the same age now that Steiner is. So when I was younger, like he's 33, I'm 32. So like I looked at him and I'm like, oh, he's just an old man. When I was like playing it at like 10 years of age or whatever, and now I'm looking at it thinking, yeah, actually, like he's having not a midlife crisis, but he's having like
Yeah.
he's looking at a bunch of young kids and going, I'm trying to let certain I see it like you completely see the different dynamics. So it's like mind blowing.
Well, it's because like early on, like you're saying, like he's like a grown adult. He
Yeah,
thinks that he is like essentially got society figured out. He's like, all right, this is my job, this is my role. I'm expected to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to only do and
yeah,
care about X, Y, and Z. And
yeah,
then he gets thrown into the situation where he has to completely abandon that, and then is able to like observe considerably younger people that are half his age, and
yeah,
like really like completely changes
yeah.
who he is as a person through adventuring with them. And I don't know, I
So
just think
good.
that's cool.
I think it's cool. Anyway, I'm sure I could probably talk to you all night, but
Oh, dude,
unfortunately,
if you were like talk to me about FF9 for the rest of the day, like I don't know if you ever come by and hang out whenever I speed run the game, but like
every now and then, yeah.
this is what it's like sometimes. Like when people ask like
Hmm.
a good question, like they'll get me going, and I'm like,
Okay.
it's so
Well,
interesting just to see people chime in and what people agree with or disagree with. It's always a good time.
maybe we'll do it again at some point, but that's cool. But the last question is, would you like to plug anything specifically that you're working on
Do
or
I want to
looking at?
plug anything?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Oh, what am I working on now? Not really. I don't know. I'm just trying to. I've actually kind of been trying to get through some casual games that I have kind of allowed to stack up. anyone that games knows that over time your library of games that you buy and intend to play just grows over time. Now, like when you also spend like more than 50% of your time speed running the same things, that backlog just like
Yeah.
it just gets so immense. So I've been trying to kind of work on that. I recently went back to an old speed run of mine, which is Zelda Link to the Past. I've
Yep.
been re-practicing that. And so I've been doing that a lot, kind of slowly working through that. I would like to get back into that and probably main that for a little while. Like I said, I work at a school, so I have the summers off. So I usually pick one of the Final Fantasy games, and like that's what I kind of do for the summer when I'm not working. And then throughout the year, I still do those, but just considerably less. But
Hmm.
that's kind of what I'm up to now. Nothing wild, just gaming, hanging out.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we could probably talk again about really nerdy stuff, the story stuff. I'm sure we could probably talk
Yeah,
about at
let me
some
let
point.
me know
No, fantastic.
anytime.
Well, thank you for your time. Take care. Have
Yeah,
a
no,
good one.
I really enjoyed this. Thanks for
So did
inviting
I.
me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Cheers.
Yep.
Bye now.
Have a good one.